What does a predator look like? It looks like everyone. It looks like you, it looks like me. Their fathers, their mothers, their teachers, their students.
The surprising part to what we see more so with every single case that we've had is just the sure how easy these people are fitting into our regular day society. We'd also found and got testimony from the subject where he essentially told us that there was no financial gain. He essentially told us that our children, at the end of the day, our children to him and in his eyes were essentially a business scheme of supply and demand.
We talk about this being a war, and this is how I view the war. And this is what got me involved in this fight. Is when I started to understand how we as a society have left a completely unguarded flank in the defense of our children.
This work for me matters a lot because at the end of the day, I have my own children at the house, and I can't justify and look my own children in the face, 10, 20 years down the road and say, as an investigator or as a deputy or as a cop or, whatever the title may be, that I gave 110% to make sure you had a safe life and a safe growing up.
For me, it's like, if I don't, then who is? When I started doing this work, one of the things that I noticed was a lot of people, when you tell them what they do, they're always like, yeah, thank you. We are so glad that you are doing it. We're so glad that somebody's doing it, but I couldn't do it. And that seems to be the sentiment on a lot of people. It's like, we want somebody to do it, but it can't be me. So if I don't do it, who's gonna do it?
Before I worked child exploitation crimes, before I became a father, I think it's easy to believe that this happens somewhere far off. It happens in another jurisdiction. I was working major crimes at a sheriff's office the first time we had a child exploitation case that I had direct involvement with. And it involved an individual who came to meet a purported 13-year-old in our jurisdiction. It opened my eyes to the fact that individuals are willing to drive and engage in child exploitation offenses in a hands-on fashion. And not only did the individual drive to meet what he believed to be a 13-year-old, but doing the forensic examination on his phone after the fact, we discovered that he had a hoard of child exploitation, child sexual abuse material.
Is the innocence of your child worth believing this will never happen to my kid? Are you willing to put that at stake? Because we've told you the reality of this fight. We've shared with you what your children are up against. And to believe that it couldn't happen to yours, well, the numbers speak for themselves.
So the state of North Carolina ended the 2024 with 28,000 reports of child exploitation from the National Center. In May, May of 2025, we're already at 13,000, and we're on track to do 33,000. Currently, there are 2,038 open cyber tip investigations.
As little as 40 minutes, a child goes from first contact with a sextortion bad actor to tragic consequences such as self-harm or suicide within that short period of time.
90% of sextortion victims are males ages 14 to 17.
One of the scary numbers that we've seen within that survey is out of about 200 children that have taken it so far, 76% of them have shared with us that they have either shared or seen nude photos of themselves or others shared across their school systems, across their friend group.
Some of the numbers that I've heard, of 30,000 cyber tips in North Carolina alone that were in the top 10 for, the exploitation cases. Those stats are mind-blowing.
This year, there have been over 13,000 cyber tips reported. And when we talk about those cyber tips, those are involving the sexual exploitation of children ranging from infants through high school. That is over a 670% increase in the last 6 years.
Every day that we are chasing these tips down, you can go online and you can see hundreds of people all across the state actively downloading child exploitation, actively searching for children. It's something that it doesn't end, it's ongoing, and there are no breaks.
We run across very extreme imagery. The imagery might depict a child engaged in anal rape. It might be a child that's tied up with bondage. It might be a child that's as young as an infant. So the first case that comes to mind for me, I've been working in child exploitation specifically since 2017, is the Kevin Nunn case. That case started out as a National Center for Missing and Exploited Children cyber tip case involving a file sharing platform. I received a call from a state local partner of mine that I've worked with for a long time, and he asked for help on a search warrant, asked for help doing an interview and being present at the scene of the search warrant. We interviewed the suspect, and in talking with him, we realized that he was downplaying his role. The digital forensics revealed that not only had he been involved in the receipts and the downloading of child sexual abuse material, what we formerly have called child pornography, Mr. Nunn was also involved in chatting and as part of an online community on one of these file sharing platforms that also has a chat functionality. I worked from an Excel spreadsheet in compiling suspect information on what ended up being co-defendants. By the end of our time looking at that case, we had somewhere north of 50 targets that were scattered across the United States. A couple notable targets from that particular investigation, in addition to Mr. Nunn, who was charged federally. We had an individual who was a youth pastor and a volunteer fireman. We had an individual who was producing content on his own children, which involves obviously the hands-on sexual abuse of his own children. We had a soccer coach, we had law enforcement officers, we had a detective, and we had a variety of other targets, including a sex offender, who were all arrested as part of this same operation. Again, it stemmed from a single cyber tip to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and thanks to a state local partner who reached out, we were able to coordinate and have an excellent outcome for that particular case.
I had a case that involved a great-grandfather that was sexually exploiting his step-great-granddaughter. She was under the age of 12 when he was doing this. He was doing it online. She didn't live near him. He didn't have access to her physically. But he did have a biological granddaughter that was the same age. And her parents had all the safeguards in place. She wasn't allowed to be online. She didn't even have a cell phone. They had no cell phones for children in their home. The children had no online social media platforms or no online gaming platforms. They were living a very normal childhood outside of social media. However, the grandfather did have access to that child. And so that child is the one that Grandpa put his hands on. So none of our children are safe, whether or not they're online or not. What we're seeing here is when our children are exploited online, these perpetrators that are behind this, they are seeking a victim that they can actually put their hands on. And we know that from studies that have been done in the past.
Oftentimes when we get to speak in the school systems especially, we have time after time, we have had lines of children waiting to speak to us. It's like someone finally shared with them, hey, we know what you're up against. And they felt comfortable coming to us and saying, let me tell you what happened to me. A fourth grade girl who sat down and shared how she had fallen in love with a boy on Snapchat, and unfortunately the boy that she thought she was speaking with was actually a much older adult. And in speaking with that adult, he over time had groomed this young girl to believe that he loved her and wanted to be with her, and then began asking for pictures. And in asking for pictures, she alerted her mom. However, it didn't stop there. This individual proceeded to make new accounts after her parents had blocked the initial accounts. And in doing that, he began to tell this 4th grade girl that if she did not send photos to him, that he would commit suicide. And this girl took that and processed it not well, to the point where she had began cutting herself up and down her legs to deal with the anxiety of having someone's life at stake by not sending nude photos. That same day at the event, at that community event or opportunity to speak at that school, we had a line of children that we didn't even get to speak to all of them. We had a line waiting to tell their stories.
So what is a cyber tip? So anytime you have your electronic service providers, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Yelp, Pinterest, Roblox, Fortnite, whenever they find what they deem as child exploitation on their platform, they submit what is called a cyber tip line report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Within that cyber tip, they provide subscriber information that was provided by the user, so it'd be usernames, phone numbers that they signed up with, email addresses, and they also provide information such as IP addresses and connection logs from the suspect connected to that platform. That is sent to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. NCMEC then looks to see where in the country that subscriber or suspect resides, and then they send it to the lead local law enforcement agency for that state. For the state of North Carolina, it's the SBI's Computer Crimes Unit. Upon receiving our cyber tips, the Computer Crimes Unit, we will triage all cyber tips that come in to the state of North Carolina. We verify the content, whether it's child exploitation videos or images, or chats or grooming of minors. We send out legal process to try to figure out who's behind that IP address, and then we send out leads to our state partners, which is we have over 250 local law enforcement officers, whether it be local PDs or sheriff's offices across the state, to investigate these reports of child exploitation.
So for me, I think a case that really hit home was a case that was really local in our community near, probably our largest park in Forsyth County of Tanglewood Park, where we had an individual that was facilitating and running, multiple chat rooms online that were across the country, all the way from Hawaii to the West Coast to even here in North Carolina. To see that in kind of your backyard, not far from where most of us investigators and deputies live at, is crazy, because most likely we went in the same ice cream shop with this individual, we went in the same Walmart, we went in the same grocery store, and chances are you may have even run into them and at the end of the day have no clue and no idea that this person, when they go home and in the dark shadows of their own room, they're running and facilitating these chat rooms where kids are being exploited and moved and run around. So while running those four chat rooms that were scheming all the way from Hawaii to here in the States and all the way to the West Coast, we'd also found and got testimony from the subject where he essentially told us that there was no financial gain, there was no real big, scheme of getting money or trading or anything of that nature. His ultimate mindset in this whole thing was that he exactly told us he had a business mindset and he saw it as a supply and demand. He essentially told us that our children, at the end of the day, our children to him and in his eyes were essentially a business scheme of supply and demand.
The success of the Invictus Task Force is just an example of what law enforcement is capable of when they have the manpower, the tools, the resources to investigate these crimes as they should be investigated. Why the name Invictus? Invictus means unconquerable, undefeatable. And our message is very clear. We want these victims to understand that they are more than their circumstances. They are unconquerable. They are undefeatable. they are worthy. And that's where the Invictus Project came along. And we stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder with our law enforcement partners to ensure that they have those tools and resources, that they have the equipment to meet their operational needs in real time. We ensure our law enforcement partners have the most up-to-date and cutting-edge equipment in this fight. But not only that, sometimes we just have no way of knowing, with the vast increase of these cyber tips that we're seeing every year, what our operational tempo is going to look like in the coming year. The NGO partnership also provides funding in real time for our investigators when there are resources that they need that weren't budgeted for. No more waiting on approval, no more waiting on an amended budget, but let's get the bad guy right now.